Afternoon, everybody. My name is Brad. I'm an alcoholic. Grace and my God, I've sobriety March 8th, 03. We'll go for that today. It's always a pleasure to sit here and stand up here and talk in front of a room full of, I'd say, at least 1,500 people. That's about right, Tim? About those numbers a little bit? Before I get started, I'd like to go ahead and say happy early Mother's Day to all the mothers in the audience with a little bit of perspective here. Chapter 8, 2 wives says, "But for every man who drinks, others are involved. The wife who trembles in fear of the next debauch, the mother and father who see their son wasting away." So if you're a mother in Al-Anon, thank you. If you're a mother in Alcoholics Anonymous, we're all real glad you're here. Real glad you're here. I'd also like to thank Steve Bird. I have a feeling that when the committee asked for somebody in YPAA, there were just crickets. And Steve said, "Well, I don't know anybody in YPAA, but I know somebody who got sober when they were young, so that's going to be good enough." And he said, "All right, let's move on down the list." I appreciate that very, very much. But I'd like to get started by, like I said, this is definitely a God deal for me because, like I said, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not a member of YPAA or any other fellowship or anything along those lines. And so I didn't really know if I qualified to stand up here and fill this spot, and I appreciate the opportunity to do it. It's always a pleasure to get up here and tell the story that really anybody can tell, because there's nothing different about my story than anybody else's story, and that's a very humbling fact for me, because I want to get up here and I want to feel like I'm different. I want to feel like there's something unique about me. I want to feel like I did it, and that's not the truth. The truth is that left to my own devices, I'm drunk. Left to my own devices, I can't not take a drink. Left to my own devices, I will get drunk. And the big book assures me that it will be at exactly the wrong time, and I will create all kinds of hell. And that's exactly what my experience tells me as well. I'd also say that this is definitely a God thing for me, because I walked in the room and I was sitting right back there in the corner, because that's kind of what I do. I sit back in the back even still today, and there's a gentleman that came up to me and said hi, who I hadn't seen in a good number of years, and that was the gentleman who bought me my first 30-pack. And that was a neat gift for me. It was a really neat gift. I had to tell him thank you for that. Thank you. That's a big part of my story. That first 30-pack was between me and my best buddy and the gentleman that bought it. He was a senior in high school, which, man, that was so cool. And, it was a Friday night or something to that effect, and me and my friend were going to share that first 30-pack. And I don't know how that ended up for my friend, but I know that for me that ended up in my first blackout, and this really very clear, vivid thought that even though that first Bud Light tasted horrible, that second Bud Light, that was real familiar. That was, that feeling inside of me as it was going down my throat, it did something for me. I can tell you right here that alcohol does the exact same thing to me that it does to anybody else on this planet. It gets me drunk. But it does something for me. And I don't know how to explain that. My wife was asking me that one time, and I was trying to explain what alcohol does for me. And, the only way I can put that is say, it lets me feel normal. And that's it. That's all I ever wanted. Out of all of the alcohol, out of all of the outside issues, all I ever wanted was just to feel normal. And, I started, that first drunk was when I was 15 years old with my buddy, and this disease picked me up and threw me to the ground really, really quick. It was within a couple short months. I was drinking every morning just to be able to walk out the front door. I wasn't drinking because I had the shakes in my mind. I wasn't drinking because I was dependent. I was drinking because I needed to be able to go out the front door and I needed to get to class. That was what needed to happen. And for some odd reason, in just a few short months, I could no longer do that left to my own devices. I simply couldn't. I didn't have the courage. I didn't have the ability. I didn't have the fortitude. Whatever you want to call it, I didn't have it. But I knew that if I took a couple of drinks, then I could get back to that place where I felt like I was about on even keel with you guys. And kind of the way I just described it is, I always felt like there was this line of people. Mankind was this line of people, and I was the one that was standing out front. I was kind of right there out front, and I stuck out like a sore thumb. And a couple of drinks, the big book refers to it as that sense of ease and comfort. And that sense of ease and comfort for me was being able to kind of take a few steps back and get right in line with everybody else. And suddenly I was okay. When I was right in line with everybody else, I was okay. The problem is that I have this thing called alcoholism. And the big book says that there's one thing that makes a person an alcoholic. One thing. And it's in the doctor's opinion. And that's what I suggest that gentlemen go find, is what's the one thing that makes me an alcoholic? And there's that one thing that makes me an alcoholic. It means that once I take a drink, I don't know how many drinks I'm going to take. And so I would drink just enough to get in line with everybody else, but then I couldn't stop drinking. And so I kept taking those steps backwards and backwards and backwards, and eventually just fell off that cliff. We call that oblivion. And I drank for that place of oblivion. I started drinking because I wanted to feel normal, and then ultimately I had to drink for oblivion because I couldn't stop. There's some really good tests in the big book is whether or not I'm an alcoholic, and I'll be forever grateful for really good sponsorship when I got to the rooms at AA that really took the time to help me learn what it was that makes a person an alcoholic. Because when I got here, I was young and I was pretty, and I hadn't lost the house, I hadn't lost the job, I hadn't lost the car, I hadn't lost the thing, I hadn't lost any of that. I had the utter inability to put that into perspective. I was not able to function long enough to get a house, or long enough to get a car, or long enough to get a job. I worked for my father because he was the only person who could give me a job. And I didn't ever have any of this stuff. But when I walk in here, all the differences are you people are drunks and y'all lost it. And I never lost it. So how do I know if I'm an alcoholic or not? And there was I didn't get in here by mistake, but really good sponsorship took me through the book and set me down and helped me find out what makes a person an alcoholic. Because when I got here, I was hurting. And I was hurting really, really bad. Like I said, this disease picked me up and threw me to the ground. And it wasn't very long before I was 100% dependent upon alcohol to do anything. It wasn't very long at all. And, I like to say, here in AA, we always share the story about the first drunk, and the story about the last drunk. All that stuff in the middle, that's just alcoholic stuff, right? That's just what we do. The book says that, we've been talking to you about seemingly tragic things, and all of those tragic events that came to pass, that's just alcoholic stuff. And I'm really grateful that when I got in here, y'all didn't make a big deal out of that stuff, because that's just normal alcoholic stuff. And that last, I guess, I get to the place where I have to drink, and I have to use all of those outside issues in order to just feel normal. I'm not trying to drink to feel good. I'm not trying to drink to party. I'm isolating. I just want to be alone, and I just want to be okay. And in my mind, being okay is not feeling. If I can get to the place where I just don't feel, I'll be okay. I can just kind of coast through this life, and that's going to be all right. And I'll figure out what the levels are, and how much alcohol and other outside issues I need to take, and we'll make this work. And I start going to of course, like we all do, I went to see every doctor I could see, all the psychologists, all the psychiatrists, I call them the it's, thems, he, she's, and theys. I did all of that stuff. I tried everything I could do to be okay, because I never fit. I could fit in. I could go into a group of people and feel alone on the inside, but fit in. I could walk the walk, I could talk the talk. If y'all were ducks, I could quack like a duck, and I could do that stuff, but I didn't fit. Deep down, in the place where I live, I didn't fit. And I got that expression from a woman in one of my home groups down in San Angelo when I was there for a long time. She was sitting there and she was hurting really, really bad. And she and I were talking after a meeting, and she's just wanting to run, and she's saying, "Brad, I just don't fit. I just don't fit." And I'm thinking, "Oh my God, I get that." Because I didn't fit, and I don't know how else to describe that. But I get to the place where I just don't fit for long enough, and I had this idea that if I can just not feel, if I can just lie to the right psychiatrist and get the right drugs, then I'll be okay, which that didn't make me okay. If I can just go to the right psychologist and tell them the right lies, then I'll be okay. And, that doesn't make you okay. What that got me was my last drunk, which was nowhere near as bad as the vast majority of my drunks, but that last drunk, this is a period of time when I'm trying to keep myself sober, because by this point, I don't know about y'all, but I was a fairly smart human being when I got through Alcoholics Anonymous, and I knew that drinking and drugging was a problem. I knew that. I could see that. I could see that prior to starting drinking, I was a decent human being. After I started drinking, I can't control it, and life's falling apart, and all I really need to do is stop. if I just take away the alcohol, then I'll be okay. I'll go back to being a normal human being, and things will be good. And that's a really great theory, unless you're an alcoholic. Because I had no idea that alcohol would become my answer. I had no idea. I didn't know that it was alcohol that made everything possible. I didn't know that. It made existence possible. I did not know that I was in that place. And so I'm trying to stop drinking. And I'm the craziest I've ever been. Craziest I've ever been. You take the solution away from people like us, and we get crazy. Crazy. And, at this period of time, Bigler talks about being in full flight from reality. And I think I'm sober for about 30 days. I think I've been keeping myself sober for about 30 days. Turns out I've been 3 days. My mother will gladly attest to that, actually. And I'm out working, and I'm working for my dad, and I'm doing jobs by myself, which is great because I'm crazy, and it's just like Fred's story. I'm doing this job, and I'm happy, and there's not a cloud in the sky. And this is the exact thought that runs through my mind. It runs through my mind this fast. It says, man, this being clean and sober stuff is great. Let's go get loaded. Okay. Boom. And I devote the next several hours, because at this point I want house arrest, and I don't have any money, and, all this stuff's falling apart. And I devote the next several hours to figuring out how I'm going to lie, cheat, and steal to get what I think I need. And not once to the idea, Brad, maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe you shouldn't do this. Maybe you should stay sober. Never once did that cross my mind. And so what happens is I go on that last drunk, which for me was a kind of a little syringe full of outside issues, and it kind of all fell apart. Just all fell apart. And what happened is later that evening, I find myself standing in the shower, and I'm standing there in the shower, and I'm numb on the inside. I'm as numb as I've ever been. I can't feel a thing. And there's a little razor right down there, and I grab that little razor, and I'm not trying to kill myself or anything like that, but I just start cutting on me, because I think I can't feel on the inside, but maybe I can still feel on the outside. I can remember watching that blood go down the drain, thinking I can't feel on the outside either. And finally, I was exactly as numb as I wanted to be, and I wasn't okay. I was not okay on the inside. And I'm really grateful that prior to that, I had a week-long blackout that landed me in the ER one more time, and this time it was in a town that was about 200 miles away. And I'm really grateful that in that hospital there was a really good doctor, and that really good doctor told my family that what I needed was Alcoholics Anonymous. And at the time, my family was not willing to do that because, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm young and pretty. There's no way I can be an alcoholic. But I'm grateful that after that last drunk, that they said, Brad, you need Alcoholics Anonymous. And so what that looked like at the time was a rehab, and I'll be forever grateful for rehabs because there's no answer in there, but that gave me a safe place where I could sit there and be crazy and go through the detox and run from the 6-foot tarantula that was on the ceiling chasing me, and do all that fun stuff, that detox stuff. And I'll be forever grateful that they introduced me to the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they said that once I got out of there, that what I needed to do as fast as I possibly could was find a home group, as fast as I possibly could. And so what happened is, as a direct result of that, I got out of that place and was terrified because they were saying things like all that you have available is jails, institutions, and death. All this crazy stuff, and they were also saying God a lot, which I had a really big problem with the God concept. And they were doing all of these things that to me seemed completely counterintuitive. Like all I'm going to do is stop drinking and using. Like why do we have to bring God into this deal, right? Like I thought I had neatly evaded that. I really did. And why do I have to go meet with other drunks and do all this other stuff? And they say, well, Brad, if you're an alcoholic, the only thing that we have to suggest, and the only thing that modern medicine has to suggest, is entire abstinence. We highly recommend you don't put another drop of alcohol in your body, because you got this thing called alcoholism, which means that once you do it, it kicks off this phenomenal craving, which the big book says never occurs in the moderate tempered drinker. Never. Just in people like me. And if you're one of the people like me, if you're one of my tribe, all medicine can suggest is that you don't pick up another drink. And the problem with that, though, is that, like I said, if you're an alcoholic and you take my solution, if I'm an alcoholic and you take my solution away, I get crazy. And what I found is that Alcoholics Anonymous provides a way of life that makes it to where I don't have to get crazy today. I don't have to get crazy. It actually gives me a solution, interestingly enough, a solution that I had no idea that I needed. Rather that I desperately needed, but I fought against every step of the way. Because it also says in here that rebellion dogs are every step, and that's exactly what my experience is. That second step, I was not willing to admit that there was something bigger than me, but I was willing to say that maybe, just maybe, it was possible. Maybe. The book also says that as soon as a man is even willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on the right path. That third step for me looked like listening to a whole lot of other people say that prayer out loud and making a conscious decision that maybe, just maybe, the rest of these steps have an answer for me. And being willing to do that. And I was going to finish the rest of these steps. That first fourth step was absolutely crazy and filled with all kinds of insanity. And that first fifth step, I did that fifth step with a preacher of I still had a friend at the time, and he went to church, which was kind of a neat deal. And I did it with his preacher because in my thought process was I never had to see that man again if I didn't want to. But I knew for a fact that I was going to keep going back to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't trust you yet, but I knew for a fact that there was something in there. Because when I walked into that first meeting at my home group, I remember it very vividly, there were people laughing. I mean, this is horrible stuff. This is tragic stuff. There were people laughing. And I had forgotten how to do that. I didn't know you could do that. Especially without a drink. I didn't know you could do that. I'll fast forward a little bit, but I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I got hooked up with a sponsor eventually, and I say eventually, it was probably pretty quick. But, we kept working these steps, and I kept doing this deal, and, the direct result of that is I'm about a year and a half sober, and we're getting ready to move out of my parents' house finally. And it's me, my mother, and my father, which, excuse me, I get a little teared up about this, but best memory that I have, we're sitting around the kitchen table. And I don't know why, but the sun is probably just the perfect light coming through the windows. The sky is probably just the perfect color blue that there ever was. And what we're doing is we're all three sitting there and we're talking and we're laughing about these tragic things. Because not only have I been healed, but they've been healed too. Because that's what this deal does, is it repairs every aspect of my life. And I don't know how that works, but it's not a funny thing when a father has to carry his convulsing son into the ER one more time because he's overdosed. That's not a funny thing. So a year and a half later, to be sitting around the table and laughing about that event, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And it's not because I did anything. It's a direct result of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Direct result of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, the entirety of this program. I'm very, very grateful for that today. Very grateful for that opportunity. But I'll also say, I got to reflecting on this whole young people in AA type deal, which I think is kind of bogus. But, because when I walked in here, I was a young person, and I love what Vicki said earlier. I've got a bulldog inside me, and I had to claw and scratch and fight really, really, really hard for this deal. And I absolutely had the mindset there was not a single thing, because the traditions say there was not a single thing that you people could do to kick me out of here. And I was going to be here no matter what. I didn't care if you were old and if we were different. I was going to find the similarities, and I was going to get this deal, and I was going to do it, and I was going to work it, because I absolutely did not want to have to go back to what I was doing. I did not want to have to go back to that insanity, and it wasn't fear. It's the big book says that fear sobered me for a bit, and when I came in here, there was a whole lot of fear, and I can remember walking around in circles saying the Serenity Prayer, looking like I was absolutely crazy, walking around in circles in my driveway, saying the Serenity Prayer because I did not want to have to drink. And I'll also say that I'm really grateful that I sobered up in a small town that had only 3 meetings a week, because what that forced me to do was learn how to stay sober between meetings. I've since lived in larger cities where there was a meeting, 3 or 4 meetings a day. I could go to a meeting all day long if I wanted to. And what I do is I hide out in Alcoholics Anonymous. The old timers that were here when I got here, they forced me to learn how to stay sober between meetings. And what that looked like was picking up the phone and calling a sponsor. What that looked like was going with my sponsor and other members of AA to meetings in other cities. We went a lot. We went to a lot of places. And I'll say that when I was 6 months sober, we were down at a conference in Fort Davis, which is a wonderful conference. If you've ever been there, if you've never been there, I suggest you go. They have 2 a year, but we were down there, and it was early in the morning, and I'm not a morning person at all. And we were all camping out, right? And so I just slept on the floor, and I just drove 5.5 hours or whatever it is to get to Fort Davis. And horrible experience. And I wake up, and I'm still trying to wipe the sleep from my eyes, and there's another member of Alcoholics Anonymous there. And we were very well. Again, I don't understand it, but the sun was. The light from the sun was just the right color, and the sky was just the right blue, and the leaves on the tree were just the right color. And she looked and she said, "Brad, has anybody told you they love you today?" And I'm thinking, "You crazy lady, I just got out of my tent, And she says, "If nobody has, well, I love you." And she gave me a hug. And I don't know how to describe that, but for some reason, right then and there, I fit. As a direct result, I thought, maybe this AA deal works. Maybe it does. 6 months sober, maybe I'm going to be okay. If I keep coming in here and I keep doing this deal and I keep working with other alcoholics and I keep sharing and I keep trying to be open and honest, maybe this deal is okay. Vicki mentioned that St. Francis prayer earlier, which I can't do that by any stretch of the imagination. There's a couple little lines in the middle that says, it's better to give than receive, to understand than to be understood, to love rather than love. And I can remember reading that in a meeting, and you people were talking about it, and it was a foreign concept to me. And I thought, maybe if I can give a little bit more than I take, maybe I can do that. Maybe I'll be okay. And I'm really grateful for this deal, for the power of this program, because I for a long time I had a resentment against people in AA who would say, "Oh, you got sober at such a young age. That's so amazing." Blah blah blah. And really, because my mindset was, I don't understand what you're talking about. I got to that place that we all talk about, that pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I got to that bottom. I got to that place where I'm standing in line and kind of everybody in front of me is going, and the lady's got the rubber stamp, and Sally Sue gets her paper check with that rubber stamp, and it says, "You're going to be successful," green check mark. And the next guy says, "You're going to own your own company," green check mark. And just going on and on. And all these people are getting really great things. And I get this rubber stamp that's red, that has a big red X on it that says "alcoholic, hopeless," and hands it to me. And I got that at 17, and I thought, "What the hell are you talking about?" I'm so fortunate. It's ridiculous. Today, what I understand is the opportunity that's been given me is to grow up in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's a really neat deal. To grow up in rooms where people talk openly and honestly about spiritual principles. Where you share your lives with me, and as a direct result, I share my life with you. Where you share the good things, but most importantly, you share the bad things. So that's what my sponsor told me in the beginning. He said, "Right, it's important to come in here and talk about the good stuff," which, all I've been talking about is the good stuff. But come in here and talk about the good stuff, but it's even more important to come here and talk about the bad stuff. Because when you share the bad stuff with me, that's when I identify. That's when the good stuff, that's just you, and God loves you more than me, so that's never going to happen for me. But that bad stuff, I see bad stuff happen in your life because you share it with me. And as a direct result, I share the bad stuff with you, and I figure out that you're human and I'm human, and that's okay. This deal's a one day at a time thing. And all I have to do is come in here, suit up, show up, and do this deal on a daily basis, and that's a really neat opportunity. And I'm very grateful for that. So as a direct result, I don't have that resentment anymore today. When people say, "Wow, you got sober at such a young age, that's really neat," I don't resent that. I don't think it's any different than somebody sobering up at an older age, but I certainly don't resent it. And that's progress for me. It's a whole lot of progress. I'll also say that, that event that experience with my parents about a year and a half sober, one of the coolest things that came out of that deal is, because I don't know about y'all, but I don't like feeling at all. And I definitely don't like showing my emotions, which one thing y'all have taught me how to do is how to stand in front of a room full of people and cry if I have to cry and be okay. And so that's a really neat thing. But, one thing that came out of that experience was they said they were really proud of me. Excuse me. And, me trying to be cute, I said, "Oh, well, y'all did such a good job." And they said, "No, we didn't do it." And what they meant was that Alcoholics Anonymous did a really good job. And today I agree. I'm really grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I get really pensive on days like this because I get to reflect. And that's what this deal is. It's an opportunity to sit back and reflect. And been through a lot of normal life stuff, and I've done exactly what you told me to do. I've come in rooms with Alcoholics Anonymous. I've suited up and shared my life with you. I've let you share your life with me. And I've continued to do this work. And I don't like this work. The book says that practically none of us like this work. And I'm certainly, the one that doesn't like the result. Man, these results are fantastic. Really fantastic. As a direct result, I have a wife today that, as of right here, right now, has never seen me drink. I have 2 little kids today that, as a direct result of the program, right here, right now, I've never seen me drink. I have a lot of friends in my life, and I say this kind of jokingly in my home group, but there are very few people in my life today that would call me a lying SOB. Very few, very, very few. And that's a big deal in my world. I didn't really mean for this to turn into kind of a gratitude talk, but that's apparently kind of the course it's taken. But what I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous is how to live a day at a time. I've learned this elusive thing called emotional sobriety. I've learned how to be okay. My sponsor refers to as, excuse my language, but being up to my ass in alligators and being okay. And sometimes even today, I'm up to my ass in alligators, but for the most part, I'm okay. And I don't have to take a drink over it. And I don't have to get crazy over it, and I don't have to lash out at the family over it, and I don't have to do a whole heck of a lot of things over being up to my ass in alligators. And for a person who absolutely positively could not function long enough in life to do anything, because that's what it is I couldn't function long enough to get anything, to do anything, to have any laurels. I didn't have anything to rest on when I got here. So, for a person who couldn't function long enough, and a person who was left to his own devices, never going to see today. Never. I was never going to live long enough to see today. Today's been a very beautiful day, and I thank you very much for that opportunity.